Technology is not an event, it's just part of the everyday learning. Dears, today let us discuss about technologies for building processors and memory. The technologies that have been used over time varies with an estimate of the relative performance per unit cost for each technology. This technology shapes what computers will be able to do and how quickly they will evolve. That is, reducing the cost and increasing the speed. So in the year 1951, the technology used in computer is vacuum tube and the relative performance per unit cost is 1. And in 65, the technology used is transistor. In the second generation computer, the transistors are used and the performance per unit cost is 35. And in the year 1975, integrated circuit technology is used in the third generation computers with a relative performance of 900 per unit cost. And in the year 1995, very large scale integrated circuits are used. And in the year 2013, ultra large scale integrated circuit technology is used in the computers. Vacuum tubes are used in the first generation computers. This vacuum tube computer is a computer which uses vacuum tubes for logic circuitry. So this vacuum tubes contains electrodes for controlling electron flow and they were commonly used as an on or off switches to perform digital computations. The size of the computer which is built using this vacuum tube technology is very high. The ENIAC, the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, also known as ENIAC, was the first computer that uses the vacuum tube technology. So the vacuum tube technology is used in the first generation computer, but the computers generated using this technology is very large in size. Here comes the transistors. These transistors are used in the second generation computers. They are one of the basic building blocks of modern electronics and it is composed of semiconductor material usually with at least 3 terminals for connection to an external circuit. So it consists of at least 3 terminals for connecting to an external circuit. Okay, the transistor requires very small DC supply voltage compared to the vacuum tubes for its operation. A transistor can also be extensively used for switching operation, either for opening or closing of a circuit. The size that uses this transistor technology is reduced when compared to the vacuum tube technology. Here comes the integrated circuits. This technology is used in the third generation computers. So in place of transistors, the third generation computers uses integrated circuits. A single integrated circuit has many transistors, resistors and capacitors along with the associated circuitry. And this development made computers smaller in size, reliable and efficient. So when compared to the first and second generation computers, the size of the computers becomes smaller because we are using a single chip, single integrated circuit chip which contains many transistors, resistors and capacitors. These integrated circuits are manufactured using a natural material called silicon and this silicon can act as a semiconductor. So ICs are manufactured using silicon which is a natural element that can act as a semiconductor. So as we just said, the integrated circuits are made up of silicon semiconductor material. Fine. Now let's look into how can we manufacture these integrated circuits. This manufacturing process starts with a silicon crystal ingot, which is nothing but a rod composed of a silicon crystal which is between 8 to 12 inches diameter and 12 to 24 inches long. Okay, so the manufacturing process starts with a silicon ingot which is of 12 to 24 inches long. Okay, this silicon ingot is then sliced into blank wafers using a slicer. Okay, so using a slicer, this ingot is sliced into wafers, and this is of only 0.1 inches thick. Okay, so this is sliced into 0.1 inches thick wafers. Okay, after being sliced from the silicon ingot, these blank wafers are put through 20 to 40 steps, processing steps to create patterned wafers. Okay, so these blank wafers will go through 20 to 40 processing steps to create patterned wafers. These patterned wafers are then tested with a wafer tester and a map of the good parts is made. Okay, so this patterned wafers is tested with a wafer tester and a map of the good parts is made. Then the wafers are diced into dies. One wafer produces 20 dies, of which 17 passed testing. This X means the die is bad. So out of this 20, the 17 passed the testing and 3 which is shown in X is bad. The yield of good dies here was 17 out of 20, that is 85%. Okay, so once we created the patterned wafers, it is tested with the help of a wafer tester and we'll be finding out the good and bad parts that we made. Okay, so these wafers are then diced using a dicer. We are dicing this tested wafer into dies. One wafer produces 20 dies, of which 17. Here the 17 passed the testing. The X means the died one or the bad one. So the die which is bad is shown in X. Okay, so out of this 20, 17 passed the testing. So the yield is 17 by 20, that is 85%. So out of total 20 dice are there, out of that 17 are good, and so the yield of good dice is 17 by 20, that is 85%. Okay, then these good dice are then bonded into packages and these packaged parts are then tested for a final time since mistakes can occur in packaging. So these good dice are bonded into packages and these packaged parts are tested for the final time since mistakes can occur while packaging, and then they are shipped to customers. So when testing we may have some bad dice, that one will be removed, only the good one will be shipped to customers. So this is the manufacturing process of integrated circuit. That is, the silicon ingot is sliced with the help of a slicer into blank wafers. These blank wafers undergone 20 to 40 processing steps to produce patterned wafers. These patterned wafers are tested using a wafer tester. Okay, and this tested wafer will then undergoes diced or diced into dies. Okay, so one wafer produces 20 dies, of which here 17 are good and the 3 is bad. Okay, so this yield of this dicing is 17 by 20, that is 85%. Okay, the good dies are then bonded into packages and these packaged parts are again tested by means of a part tester to check whether there is a final time mistake which occur while packaging. Okay, if and the good tested packaged dies are then shipped to customers. The cost of an integrated circuit rises quickly as the die size increases due both to the lower yield and the smaller number of dies that fit on a wafer. So the cost of an integrated circuit can be expressed using three equations. Cost per die is equal to cost per wafer divided by dies per wafer into yield, where dice per wafer is equal to wafer area divided by dice area, and yield is equal to 1 by 1 plus defects per area into die area divided by 2 the whole square. So this yield is nothing but the percentage of good dies from the total number of dies on the wafer. Then the fourth generation computers used very large scale integrated circuits. This VLSI or the very large scale integrated circuits have about 5000 transistors and other circuit elements with their associated circuits on a single chip and made it possible to have microcomputers of fourth generation. So from the fourth generation onwards, we are going to have VLSI. VLSI stands for Very Large Scale Integrated Circuits. So here it may have around 5000 transistors and other circuit elements with the associated circuits on a single chip and made it possible to have microcomputers of fourth generation. The fourth generation computers became more powerful, compact, reliable and affordable. As a result, it gave rise to the personal computer revolution. And in the fifth generation onwards, we are making use of a technology named as ULSI, stands for Ultra Large Scale Integration. This technology results in the production of microprocessor chips having 10 million electronic components. And this generation is based on parallel processing hardware and AI software. So in this video, we discussed about the various technologies for processors and memories. Thank you.